Hello everyone, myself Dr. Vaibhava Desai would like to focus on international business theories today. International business began with international trade operations facilitated by the laissez-faire in the world economy. It improved the well-being of many nations and the imposition of trade barriers reduced the gains from trade, giving rise to the search for alternate avenues to exporting. The latter resulted in the establishment of subsidiaries in foreign countries through FDI. In this context, it is pertinent to understand the determinants and the effects of international trade and FDI on the trading partners, international operations of multinationals and the economies of home and host countries. Several theories have been formulated from time to time which form the basis of international trade. Let us see why there is a need to study foreign trade theories. First, what products should we export and import? How much should we trade? And with whom should we trade? These are normally the three questions which are answered by the study of international business theories. The first theory, mercantilism theory. This theory emerged in England in the mid-16th century, referred to as mercantilism. Its principal assertion was that gold and silver were the mainstays of national wealth and essential to vigorous commerce. At that time, gold and silver were the currency of trade between countries. A country could earn gold and silver by exporting goods. On the other hand, importing goods from other countries would result in an outflow of gold and silver to those countries. According to mercantilism, countries should export more than they import. To export more than they imported, governments imposed restrictions on most imports and they subsidized production of many products that could otherwise not compete in domestic or export markets. Some countries used their colonial positions, such as Sri Lanka, under British rule to support these trade objectives. Second, the colonial powers sought to run trade surpluses with their own colonies as an additional way to obtain revenue. They did this not only by monopolizing colonial trade but also by preventing the colonies from engaging in manufacturing. Some terminology of the mercantilist era has endured. A favorable balance of trade, for example, still indicates that a country is exporting more than it is importing. An unfavorable balance of trade indicates the opposite, which is known as deficit. Many of these terms are misnomers. The next theory is absolute cost advantage theory. Adam Smith was a fortuner of the classical school of thought. He propounded a theory of international trade in 1776, which is known as a theory of absolute cost advantage. This theory explains that a country having absolute cost advantage in the production of a product on account of greater efficiency should specialize in its production and export. In Smith's time, this suggested that England should specialize in the production of textiles while France should specialize in production of wine. England could get all the wine it needed by selling its textiles to France and buying wine in exchange. Similarly, France could get all the textiles it needed by selling wine to England and buying textiles in exchange. Smith's basic argument, therefore, is that a country should never produce goods at home that can buy at a lower cost from other countries. Smith demonstrates that by specializing in the production of goods in which has an absolute advantage, both countries benefit by engaging in trade. Each country's resources would shift to the efficient industries because the country could not compete in the efficient ones. Still, this is based on three reasons. Labor could become more skilled by repeating the same task. Labor would not lose time in switching from the production of one kind of product to another. Long production runs would provide incentives for the development of more effective working methods. The next theory is comparative cost advantage theory proposed by David Ricardo. He took Adam Smith's theory one step further by exploring what might happen when one country has an absolute advantage in the production of all goods. Smith's theory of absolute advantage suggests that such a country might derive no benefits from international trade. According to Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage, it makes sense for a country to specialize in the production of those goods that it produces most efficiently and to buy the goods that it produces less efficiently from other countries. Even if this means buying goods from other countries that it could produce more efficiently itself. While this may seem counterintuitive, the logic can be explained with a simple example. Assumptions of comparative cost advantage theory. There are only two countries and they produce two goods. Labor is the only factor of production and cost of production is measured in terms of labor units. Factors output ratio is constant and marginal productivity of a factor is equal to average productivity All units of labor are homogeneous. Production is subject to law of constant returns. Factors of production are perfectly mobile within the country. There is no cost of transportation. International trade is free from all government controls. There is full employment in countries engaged in international trade. There is perfect competition both in goods market and factor market. There is trade balance, that is value of exports is equal to value of imports. The next theory is factor endowment theory, which is proposed by Heckscher-Ohlin. Trade theory changed drastically in the first half of the 20th century. The theory developed by Swedish economist Heckscher in 1990 and later expanded by his former student Berlin-Ohlin formed the theory of international trade that is still widely accepted today, factor proportions theory. According to Ohlin, international trade is but a special case of interlocal or inter-regional trade. Factor intensities in production. The Heckscher-Ohlin theory considers two factors of production, labor and capital. Technology determines the way they combine to form a good. Different goods are required in different proportions of two factors of production. According to factor proportions theory, factor intensities depend on the state of technology, the current method of manufacturing a good. The theory assumes that the same technology of production would be used for the same goods in all countries. It is not therefore differences in the efficiency of production that will determine trade between countries as it did in classical theory. Assumptions of Heckscher-Ohlin theory are there are two countries, two products and two factors. Inputs and outputs are perfectly competitive. Increasing production of product experiences diminishing returns. Identical technologies. The next theory to be covered is product life cycle theory proposed by Raymond Vernon. This theory of trade states that the location of production of certain kinds of products shifts as they go through their life cycles, which consist of four stages: introductory, growth, maturity and decline. Introductory stage: once a company has created a new product, theoretically it can manufacture that product anywhere in the world. In practice, however, the early production generally occurs in a domestic location so that the company can obtain rapid market feedback as well as save on the transport cost. At this stage, companies may sell a small part of their production to customers in foreign markets, mainly in their industrial countries, because those customers have incomes to spend on newer products. Second stage, growth. As sales of the new product grow, competitors enter in the market. At the same time, demand is likely to grow substantially in foreign markets, particularly in other industrial countries. In fact, demand may be sufficient to satisfy producing in some foreign markets to reduce or eliminate transport charges. Third, maturity stage. In stage 3, worldwide demand begins to level off, although it may be growing in some countries and declining in others. There often is a shakeout of products such that product models become highly standardized, making cost an important competitive weapon. Longer production runs become possible for foreign plants, which in turn reduce per unit cost for their producers' output. And the very last stage is decline stage. As a product moves to stage 4, decline, those factors occurring during the mature stage continue to evolve. The markets in industrial countries decline more rapidly than those in developing countries as affluent customers demand ever newer products. By this time, market and cost factors have dictated that almost all production is in developing countries, which export to the declining or small niche markets in industrial countries. In other words, the country in which the innovation first emerged and exported from then becomes the importer. This was all about the theories of international business. Thank you so much.